Okay. All right, you guys, we are live. I'm not gonna say what day it is, day what, because it's been a little bit like, we're moms. We run this nonprofit organizations, unexpected sicknesses, and that's the beauty about doing this. And I'm hearing myself on the other side. That's why
It's echoing.
it's echoing. Okay.
Is your phone off?
No, actually, it's the YouTube videos that's
Okay, got it.
yeah. Maybe I can reduce the volume and see if I can just play it. See what happens.
Sure.
Okay. Technology, okay, like um so anyway, yes, today we're talking about secrets, and we're talking about how spiritual and sexual abuse in the church can cause people to lose their faith in God, become agnostic. That's what happened for me. I became agnostic back in 2013, and it's been like 7 years of drought. And then it's like a decline and then coming back to God. And what did that journey look like? And I think there's someone who's listening who can relate to that, to feeling like the church just bashed them over their head, shamed them, used the Bible, used scripture to shame and bash and ridicule and judge. So this message is for you. So if you know somebody who is like that, tag them, put their name in the comment and let them hear this message. If it's for you, listen to it, comment, let us know, inbox us, and let us know your story of how you had been abused in the church spiritually. And we're going to talk about a little bit about what that looks like. And then also, if you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, please do that. Hit subscribe and then the notification so you can be notified when we go live to talk about the ugly. We know the good and the bad, but we hardly talk about the ugly when it comes to our spirituality. So welcome again. Lisa is here with me. Lisa is the president of Resilient Souls. For those of you who have not met you, I'll just let you just share a little bit about the organization, what we do, and how we help other people and why we're doing this.
Yes. Hi. We come together as experiencing our own trauma and abuse, and through our healing, we're able to authentically come alongside others. A Resilient Souls addresses all sorts of abuse, from childhood abuse to human trafficking, domestic violence, PTSD. We have military PTSD people in our midst, and homicide victims. So we come alongside all those with trauma stories and learn how to deal with the effect of abuse and how we walk through it together through some healing programs. We also offer services and resources to victims, and we're here to hear and hold victims so they don't have to go through it alone. We have an empowerment program that brings them into restoration, and it's really exciting to watch a woman or a man find themselves, their identity, and be empowered, and then in that strength reach out and then start actually giving back in their own gifts, in their own way. That could be anything, not even in Resilient Souls, but just to see them blossom again in life.
Yeah, blossoming again, moving. We you're moving from victim to survivor to thriver. And I believe at the end of the program, I think that's when your original design comes out, when we're so creative. And I think that's just our nature. And I think when for us, like at the end of, not really at the end, but when I know I'm healed is when I'm starting to hear music again. I feel confident in performing again, and to really bring out my gifts so that people can see what God can do, his creativity through us.
Yeah.
So
back to your original design.
Back to your original design. And so let's talk about some of the things that that kind of caused me to not feel like a child of God, to go to veer away from my original design. And it's been just a series of things that have happened throughout my life. And I think one of the most, I can say, iconic times in my life that I felt spiritual abuse was when I was in high school. And I was in a boarding school, and we had a headmistress who bashed us, shamed us, and used the word of God to shame us. And we had to memorize this verse. It says, it's a Proverbs that goes like this. It says, the wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. So if she was an all-girls school, and she thought that, she suspected some people of being lesbians, and she would like line them up, the girls, like at the front, and publicly shame them and call them lesbians. She would flog them in their office. And so we're witnessing this abuse happening, and some of us are just confused, and we are carrying this shame, this person who is using the word of God, but as a rod and staff against us, and shaming us and punishing us. And it was not a nurturing environment. Can you imagine? You're already separated from your parents. You already feel abandoned. You already feel alone. You don't feel nurtured and cared for. And now you're in this environment where it feels like a prison, where you're constantly being bashed and shamed.
Right. She used
constantly.
that power position to destroy the dignity of each individual she approached. That is not a godly woman.
No. And later on, I was in a healing ministry in Kenya, and found out that she'd been going to the same healing ministry that I was in, and she's gone through her healing journey, and she's a completely different person now.
Thank goodness.
So yeah, she's a whole different person. She's completely changed. But when I go to my Facebook group and talk to the girls, and their damage, even 25 years, you're talking about like psychological damage that the girls are still undergoing to this day.
Right.
Who have gone into very verbally and physically abusive relationships, because we've carried that shame within ourselves, because we're like, wow, this is our leader, this is our headmistress, and she's treating like that. We must deserve this. This
as a
is
child
what we feel.
would think.
As a child would think. You're like, I mean, she's obviously the authority on the Bible, right? She's a spiritual authority, and this is what she thinks of us. So this is us. This is what we might. I mean, for me at least, it was, because I was that compliant child. I was a prefect and in leadership, and so I really just kind of looked down on others as well.
Right.
Who I felt were.
She modeled that behavior.
Right. And it was that being in that kind of environment that felt like captivity and being punished, that felt like prison. But it's also the environment that made me realize, when I was volunteering in an orphanage, and then a social worker comes in with a van full of children and says, these children were in an orphanage, and that orphanage was being run like a brothel. That means those children were being sexually abused. It's what we call human trafficking in institutions like orphanages. And they're being run by, like people who are standing in, like their pastors, putting
as a front.
As a front. Yeah, they're using the church as a front to run this brothel of very vulnerable children. And they're putting these images on on a website and saying, these are children, they don't have parents, which most of them, at least 4 out of 5 of them, have family and parents. And you have well-meaning Americans who don't really look at the background, and they see children dilapidated without any clothes, and they give money to this orphanage, and they're actually contributing and to human trafficking without even knowing that they are.
Right. False
The
advertising
false
and
advertising.
manipulation and using and abusing abuse, the most vulnerable for a gain of power and money.
For gain of power and money. And so I'm looking at the situation, I'm like, I'm feeling like I'm a Christian, and I didn't want to be associated with the church. I didn't want to be associated with the mega church that
Yes.
had brought me in there to volunteer, because I was like, here I am using my own resources for this Sunday school, and I'm not getting resources to help me with these children to have a good program in this, in this orphanage. And here comes children who were sexually abused in a Christian orphanage. And I said, God, you literally, I feel like you just don't exist. How is it that human beings and Christians can do this kind of atrocities? I
Right.
completely lost it. I stopped volunteering. I
Mhm.
didn't look at the church the same, honestly. I would
Right.
kind of just go because, it was a lonely time in my life back in Kenya. And I just was like, I was just going through the motions, just going, just singing, but not really feeling God at all.
Right. Well, and they're wolves in sheep's clothing in the midst, and Jezebel spirits, Ahab's running the asylum, and Jesus has the harshest words against those that harm the most vulnerable, because it's that power and authority that they step up and they stand in the image of God and speak his word, but they use it to destroy dignity, to crush the spirit for their own gain and purpose. That is pure evil.
It is so when I decided to get married, my main attraction to my husband was because he didn't quote the Bible.
Right.
He didn't talk about Jesus. And that was why I wanted him, which was kind of like counterintuitive, because the fact that you don't believe in God is not a good thing, right? But then at that point, I was just like, didn't want anything to do with people who were just going to quote verses and be, I didn't want hypocritical people. I just like, I know what you are about. You don't quote a bunch of verses and you don't push that over me. And that's why I actually want to be in this relationship. And of course, if you followed me on Facebook, and you would know how that relationship turned out. I realized going the other way is not good either. You can't just turn away and go all the way to the left. So it ended up being a very emotional, financially, and spiritually abusive relationship coming from the parents' side. I know Lisa has probably got lost. I think maybe something wrong with her internet. But what made me turn back to God was being in that relationship. So here I am, it like literally at the end of my rope. I'm like, the world is messed up. Here on the left is agnostic, so people who don't believe in you, and so am I. I'm just like one of them because I didn't believe in God anymore, but really seeing another side of evil that I had not experienced before. Here is the church. I don't trust the church. I don't trust the world. I am feeling all alone. And that's when Jesus came to me and he said, I'm going to give you the living water. I'm going to give you the living water, and you will never thirst again. So leaving that toxic relationship wasn't really about like finding another relationship, because I had lost faith in God. I had lost faith in man. The only person that I had in that moment, in that dark moment in my life when I was contemplating taking my own life, was Jesus. And he offered me the living water and I would never thirst again. I felt like that woman at the well who had been not only married one time, not twice, not three times, but five times. And the man that she was living with was not even her husband. She probably was like, at this point, why even bother getting married? I get into a marriage, and in those days, if you burn the food, he can decide, you know what, I don't like you, get out of my house. You can divorce for like the most frivolous reasons. Maybe she went into another marriage and couldn't bear a boy. Maybe she was only having girls, and he's like, grounds for divorce. And that's why God said, I hate divorce, because these men were just divorcing their women for reasons that were just not biblical. That's why God was like, unless she is sleeping with someone, unless there is some infidelity, no, you stay married to her. That verse was meant to protect women. That verse was meant to protect women. So here, Lisa, I'm glad that you were able to come back. I was just finishing talking about how I was at the end of the rope in my marriage, and how Jesus came to me and just restored me and gave me a way out. I will give you the living water and you will never thirst again. And that was my way back to God. So since 2018, for the last 3 years, it's been me finding God. And it was in support groups that I was able to finally find that restorative relationships. So enter Resilient Souls, and what an amazing journey it has been. We always say we get hurt in relationships, but we also heal in relationships. And talk about the restorative relationships that support groups offer.
Yeah, I have worked with support groups since 2010. I even found my own true deep healing. I went through my trauma in 85, 86, 87, PTSD, diagnosed by courts, went through secular counseling, and just pressed into healing as much as I could individually. It wasn't until I came into support groups that deep inner wound started to get filled up with a holy healing.
Right.
And I believe we are born to be in relationship. We're born to work together and be together and bind ourselves together. That's how we're created. And so we bring that healing to each other. We're a reparative relationship to each other. So what was broken in relationship, we restore that. That's the attachment. We can learn reattachment, a secure base from a healthy relationship that we could walk along together with. That is amazing, and it's just how we're built. But the scary thing is that we got hurt in relationships. So it's probably the worst fear you want to do is to open yourself up to trust again. And that takes a lot of time, and others have to prove their trust to you. They have to be proved trustworthy. And I think running a healthy support group, they've come up with amazing ways, Mending the Soul, even Celebrate Recovery, and all these 12-step groups have come up with guidelines, which is the group agrees to, and that is a safety boundary. And their priority too is to make sure that the group is safe and secure. If you don't have safe and security, there's no way that anybody can open and use this part of their brain to learn. They're stuck in these lower parts of their brain. And so you have to have safety and security to become curious, to be open enough to start looking at things and learning new things looking at things at different perspectives. And they call that mentalizing, to be able to look at something in multiple perspectives and see yourself in situations. So group is powerful. Group is really, really powerful. When you have a group working in a group beside somebody going through an individual counseling, it's even more powerful when they could go into their own individual counseling alongside while going through a process group.
Yes, that's true. And one of the things that we talk about in support group is shame. And shame cannot survive in the light. And in my book, if you guys haven't gotten to Amazon and got a copy of this book as you go along, we're on day 4 in this book. It's a 40 days and nights, your healing journey to freedom and purpose. And on day 4, I talk about the secret. And in here, I talk about how I told my dad about the abuse that I went through with my cousin, and how he molested me when I was 14 years old. And then, so not only get the book and read that section. It's really powerful, that interaction that my dad and I had. You're talking about 26 years of holding this from my dad, and I never told him. And then I proceeded to tell him about the pedophile in our family. There's an uncle who was showing us really violent pornography. That was my experience. That was my first experience with, which I call it my miseducation, my sex miseducation, was, can you imagine, you've never been told anything about sex, but the first time you experience it is violent rape in pornography. So that's what I envisioned what sex looks like. What a distortion of what God's original plan was for something that's supposed to be so intimate to be shared between, and beautiful to be shared between a man and a woman. And that's what he was showing us as children. So you can imagine he was showing that to the boys and the girls. So for the boys, they became very violent, and so it was like an attempted rape. And I remember what he was trying to do to me was what he had seen in those pornographic movies that he was watching. And so he was replicating this. He was replicating what he was watching. And he was a womanizer. I remember talking to his sisters, and she says, he was like a womanizer, and he would do this to women as a teenager. As a teenager. And so I'm talking to my dad about this and the damage that one particular uncle has caused in our family. And I say was because this cousin ended up taking his life a couple of years later. He took his own life.
So sad.
So, it is the damage that was caused. And this man has never been convicted. He never went to prison for this. And because I think what they call this statute of limitation, us as children hiding our shame and not talking about it, but us as adults now in our 40s, if you try and talk about something that happened 26 years ago, and the courts are like, I guess you really can't convict something that happened that long ago. And the injustice of that, the only way to heal, honestly, was just being in a support group and to talk about it.
But I want to give such credit to your father. He heard you, and he held you without judgment, without shame. He wiped away the shame in his embrace of accepting you and loving you through this with such powerful love and protection. That's incredible. That's what it takes to help each other and to hear and to hold each other's story without an aghast reaction of, oh my gosh, that's so incredibly shameful. We don't do that. We hear and hold each other in a compassionate empathy and let the healing happen as we embrace and hold each other in a relational hearing with each other in that moment. is so powerfully needed. And it people have to learn it, I believe, how to help people to do that, or else their own shame gets tied in, as somebody else is talking about something so shameful that they experienced. Toxic shame being pushed on them by somebody else's abusive reaction and action against them.
Yeah, that's true.
Powerful.
Yeah, it's how we listen to the story. And that's another thing that you've talked about in support group. We don't fix each other in the group. We offer compassionate listening. We ask questions and say, we don't probe with questions like, oh, tell me the details. How did it happen? Where were you? What were you feeling? Where was your mom and dad? All this and that. We don't do that. We just basically say, you know what? That must have felt so painful. How, this
Affirming
all these years, affirming the pain. I
experience.
hear you saying how this has been such a debilitating thing for you over all these years. I hear you saying how it has made you stuck in so many places. I hear you. And we're holding you through this. We're not trying to fix you. We're not trying to spiritualize anything. We're not trying to throw a bunch of different Bible verses on top of what you're saying. And one of the things that in that moment, I think a verse that people like to quote that is so inappropriate in that moment. And I think it's just when we say it is like, oh, you know what? All things work together for good. You know what I mean? Well, yeah. I know it does eventually, but in that moment when someone is being vulnerable, instead of let them feel the sadness and feel it with them, instead of trying to block it. And so that's what blocks people from actually sharing it and makes the group feel really unsafe. Because then why even share what I'm feeling if you're not going to empathize with me and be compassionate with me in this moment? And
mourn with me.
And mourn with me and grieve with me. And, I must say these videos that I've put up, whenever I went on Facebook and I talk openly about a lot of the things that went through, a mother called me and told me, oh, by the way, you were talking about pornography and how house girls molest their, the boys, in school. Do you know my son is now in counseling because of the things that you talked about pornography? He opened up to me about sexual abuse in high school and boarding school. My son opened up to me about an older woman who came and molested him. And he's, as a boy, just being shameful about talking about an inappropriate relationship he had with an older woman, and just opening up and talking about these things in a way that's understanding. So, people will come in my inbox and write stories about shame and pain that they haven't told anyone, because they're men, they're supposed to be strong and figure it out.
Right.
And they're hurting on the inside.
Right.
Feeling a lot of pain and shame.
And they haven't had that open field without judgment. Without expectation, but just to hear and hold.
Right.
So we could step and walk through this together. We resonate a healing power together when we can walk that through with someone.
That's true.
To know that we're known, and we know that they know us.
Right. Yeah, to know that we're known, and to know that they know us, and I think that's the greatest thing, is to be known and to be fully known and to be fully loved for who you are. I think is just like the greatest thing that powerful. That's what it's so powerful. We'll feel human again. We feel like we're somebody, we are heard.
And it's more powerful than any pharmaceutical pill anybody could take. Yeah.
I know, that's right. Anyway, it's been an awesome discussion today. And I think there's some people who are going to be commenting and sharing their heart. We're open to receiving emails. I will put my email on there. We'll put the Resilient Souls email. We'll put the website on the link, and so that and also a link where you can also get support. I do one-on-one coaching. We are opening Mending the Lives groups. So far, we have about 5-6 people.
Mending
Kenyan
the
coaches,
soul.
yeah, mending the soul group, support groups. And yeah, there's hope. That's why we're telling the stories. We're not just opening wounds and not offering a way
Right.
for you to connect with someone. So if this video has opened something within you and you're resonating with it, just know that there is somebody who can walk with you and support you in this journey. We're not just putting up videos just for the likes or the comments. This is healing for us as well. We like to walk with people. This is our life's calling, to see people restored back to their original design, to be creative again, to feel human again, to feel heard, and be able to leave toxic relationships and truly live free and alive, to feel free and alive and walk with purpose.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And dignity, whole dignity.
And dignity. So continue walking with us in this 40 days. That's next month. We're going to turn it up. We're going to have we're going to be interviewing Kenyan coaches during the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Please look out for other events that are coming up on our Resilient Souls website. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, and we pray that you will have a blessed and wonderful day. And don't forget to subscribe.